Thank you, Kelly and Ryan. Every July, the Nichi Weekly honors writers on topics that pertain to the Japanese American community with publication of the Summer Book Review issue. I'm here now with one of the most prolific contributors of book reviews to the Nichi, none other than Professor Emeritus Art Hansen, speaking to us, I believe, from Yorba Linda, California. Why do you feel it's so important to be writing these book reviews for the Nichi? I see your name in every issue, contributing book reviews. Why so important?
Well, I need to stay active. I've been working on books, and I think a good thing for me to do is to be familiar with the new literature. And Kenji kindly asked me to sort of fill in as one of the lead reviewers a number of years ago, and I've just stayed with it since that time, and I've appreciated it.
Well, it's really wonderful. I see your byline. I know it's an article I have to read in the book review section. For those who are meeting Art here for the first time, he's a professor emeritus from Cal State Fullerton, founder of the incredibly valuable resource that is the oral history program at Fullerton. And lately, Art, you've been a machine churning out books on camp resistance, Barbed Voices, an oral history of, there it is, Barbed Voices, an oral history, resistance in the World War II Japanese-American social disaster. Nisei Naysayer, the memoirs of our friend journalist James Omura from Stanford University Press. And now, just now, it is Beyond the Betrayal, the memoirs of Yoshi Kuramiya, the first and very likely only book-length manuscript from one of the 63 draft resistors from the Heart Mountain Fair Play Committee. Art, after editing this volume of Yoshi Kuramiya's memoirs, what's your quick takeaway from it?
Well, I think it's an invaluable sort of piece of work because the person that's written it is a fine writer and a profound thinker. And I think, it's something that is not going to be a labor of pain for people to read. I think they can easily assimilate what he's trying to say and relate to him. And so I think it'll and relate to him not only as a writer, but as an example of somebody who had the courage and the sense of the Constitution and the sense of civil liberties and everything to speak up. And especially at this juncture in our history when that is a real problem in this country.
But when they tried to draft us out of the camps, that's where I drew the line, because I shouldn't have to prove my loyalty. They took away my citizenship rights, the government and the people. The public.
Absolutely. I mean, Yoshi Kuramiya was always the most, as you know, the most thoughtful and concise speakers and writers on the Fair Play Committee. And it really comes through in his manuscript that you edited. It's most compelling, I think, when Yoshi shares his personal feelings about speaking up at the mess hall meetings of the Fair Play Committee and enduring jail time with men he didn't really know, and then going to trial in what he calls the circus of the mass trial. But one of the things that he focuses on is the emotional price he pays for after his sentencing when he's dumped by his girlfriend from camp. Was that something that I think that, as I recall in the manuscript phase, he was kind of skirting that issue, and I think you and I encouraged him to focus more on that.
No, I don't think he wanted to focus too much on it, but he did come back to it in the book to talk about a later time in his life where he ran into this woman who he had not seen since the time he left camp. And shortly after, he received the Dear Yosh letter. And but he ran into her, and they had a wonderful sort of, embrace and being able to put everything into proper perspective, because she was under the pressure of her family and the entire community at Heart Mountain, really. And so he understood that, although at the time, of course, it really broke his heart.
Yeah, getting that Dear John letter, as he put it, in the Cheyenne County Jail. So I was really glad that he could share that. Yoshi's memoir, it has a lot more of that personal feeling of his personal experience. And as I write in my review of the book, I think that's where Yoshi's memoir is strongest. And but being so insightful, Yosh is also opinionated, and this is where I thought your editing of the manuscript art really was so helpful, because in your endnotes you really interrogate Yosh's occasional hyperbole or misstatement. Can you talk a little bit about that, going through the manuscript and coming across places where, for example, he cites these authors, these conspiracy theories about FDR knowingly allowing the attack on Pearl Harbor as a means of drawing the U.S. into war? You add 2 pages of footnotes on that.
Yeah, well, what I was doing when I was editing this was actually creating some firewalls, because I don't think the book would have been accepted for publication unless I did this. And fortunately, I had a copy of the anonymous review that was done by Eric Muller. And because Eric Muller is a professor of law and everything, and had written a wonderful book, about the whole resistor movement, Free to Die for the Country, I was able to hitchhike off of his information and everything else and put these footnotes in there. The other one I did pretty much on my own, the long footnote. So what I did was that I looked up as many book reviews as possible for this review. And there were enough differences that Yosh's opinion wasn't so outlandish. There were a lot of people who agreed with his assessment. There were more people who disagreed with it. But I wanted to showcase that so that people could see that this was a disputable thing. And then the way I ended it was by saying, I can understand why he might have felt jaundiced towards Franklin D. Roosevelt. After all, he could have sacrificed people at Pearl Harbor because he sacrificed 110,000 Japanese Americans by signing Executive Order 9066 that consigned them to camp for 3 years or more.
That's absolutely right. It was Robert Stinnett, or Stinnett, Day of Deceit. Yeah. So that was, I thought, a really nice, you very gently kind of corrected the record there for the readers. And also with the Eric Muller material, I thought that was incredibly valuable, where Yosh would say, well, the Fair Play Steering Committee failed us in not appealing our convictions. And then, I think, tell me about how you had the Eric Muller, you called it the Muller critique in the endnotes.
But by the time I got it, the family edition had already been printed, and one of the constraints that I had to operate on, we would not change anything in that manuscript. So the endnotes was where I really had a chance to get some, my hand into it and stuff, and my mind into it. But I was, in fact, I read that somebody has got to write, and maybe you're the right person to write a biography of Frank Emmy.
In my review, I say that your endnotes and Eric's critique are kind of half the value of the book, in addition to Yosh's memoirs. And just a reading of the endnotes all the way through is an entertaining and informative read. So we encourage people to get Beyond the Betrayal by Yoshi Kuromiya. You mentioned Gail and the daughters in closing, that the volume could have become just a family souvenir, self-published souvenir. So how were you able to get them, the manuscript, from being a self-published thing to a published volume that we can now have?
Well, Lawson and Nada contacted me first, and he said that, this family edition is out, and he'd been helping them with them, and he'd written this short stanza, a poetic stanza that was being used for the forward and everything. And then he said, could you do something to beef this up? And I said, well, like an introduction or something. And he said, yeah. So I said, I'll do that. And so then I read through the family thing, and I said, this is a waste to have this just go to his family and his friends. This is an important document, the only one, not only of the resistors at Heart Mountain, but of all the 300 resistors in all the camps. This needed to be published and everything. So I encouraged them, and of course the daughters were very much in favor of it. Yosh's widow, Irene, was not so much in favor of it. She said Yosh wanted just the family edition. And Gail and others thought down deep he really did want this. But for gosh sakes, he was a nonagenarian at that point, and he died not too many years after this. So, he wasn't going to resubmit it to another academic press. He just wanted the family edition to go forth. But I had edited the Omura memoir, so I'd gone through the territory, for God's sake, for 20 years, So I was used to writing endnotes and doing editing, I just said I'd be happy to edit it. It didn't take me very much time at all to edit it. I think I spent at the most about 2 months on it. It's just because of COVID and everything, the press didn't get it together and wasn't able to publish it, so it got delayed by about 1.5 years. But it's been done for quite a while. My part of it was done.
Well, and your part is really wonderful, Art. My last question, you may not be able to answer this, but these are things that 20 years ago, as recently as 20 years ago, year 2000, we weren't talking about draft resistance and resistance oral histories, and we did them, but they weren't really well known. Why do you think that's changed now in the year 2022? We have all your books, Barbed Voices, Nisei Naysayer, now Beyond the Trail. Why are these things coming out now?
Well, I'm building on things that people like yourself and Frank Chen and Lawson and a whole group of people, Roger Daniels, Eric Muller. People, it's been accruing over the years. I was writing about it, and Barbed Voices is really a compilation of my articles that, I'd written from 1972 or 74 when the Manzanar Riot article came out. And all of my articles were on resistance of one form or another. So that's an anthology. That's not a single volume, standalone one manuscript. It was really the alleged best ones that I had written over those years. So, but it been going on. You keeping it alive, Frank, with with the resistors.com, having somebody like Kenji, the son of a resistor, being an editor, a formidable editor, and everything was so helpful. Martha Nakagawa, who stayed with all of this sort of stuff. Everybody was there. The Times were finally getting out. There were a lot of old time JACLers were dying off in part. Really, that's true, because they were a stumbling block to a lot of this sort of thing. And then, of course, the final thing was Donald Trump's presidency. At that particular moment, everything, and now we're seeing people standing up, even Republicans standing up and being as courageous as Yosh was, and being able to say no to the big lie, and so, I think now is a very propitious time to do it, but it's been incrementally being done. So it's not just suddenly Art Hansen comes and does this thing. No, I was, riding the wave, really,
Well, Art, and it's been a wonderful experience just knowing you over the last 4 decades. And I think you're absolutely right that there's certain timing involved. In the last 5 years, the topic of resistance, I've just felt to become more interest and energy around the idea of resistance in World War II Japanese-American incarceration camps and how it sadly relates to our current political climate today. So thank you, Art. Dare I ask what else you have on the horizon?
Yes, I have a manuscript that's been accepted for publication called Manzanar Mosaic, and it's also the University Press of Colorado, and that will be out in early 2023. And then I've got another thing. I've edited a diary of Robert Brown, who was the assistant project director at Manzanar, and it's just his 1942 diary, that very first year of the first concentration camp. And I had done that 30 some years ago, and his widow wanted to borrow the manuscript from me, and then she lost it. And so it was gone. And that would have been one of my first publications. She lost it. Fortunately, her daughter came, or Bob Brown's daughter walked into the Manzanar Center and introduced herself. And the Rangers there knew about this story of mine. And so I got in touch with her and I said, do you by any chance? She said, well, I inherited a number of documents and it looks like I've got the one that you and Bob, my father, were working on. So it's his diary and I edited the diary and everything. And then the final thing that I have in the works is a book dealing with Japanese Americans in Arizona during World War II, because there were more Japanese Americans in Arizona than any other place in the United States because of Poston having 3 camps, Gila having 2 camps, and then having Loop there and everything.
Wonderful. Those will all be wonderful and important contributions, Art. So thank you for that. I mean, you've been contributing and continue to contribute, and we're really in your debt. So thank you, Art. My review of Beyond the Betrayal by Yoshikuro Miya, edited by Art Hansen, is in the Nichi Bay's new summer book review issue that'll be out a week from today, July 21st. The issue will also include reviews of 4 book reviews by Art Hansen, Two Lake Stockade Diary, Asian American Histories of the U.S., A Rebel's Outcry, biography of Issei civil rights leader Sei Fuji, and American Survivors, Trans-Pacific Memories of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm told the issue will also include reviews of The Perfect Sound by Garrett Hongo, Contemporary Asian American Activism by Diane Fujino, and also Japan the Cookbook and Ultimate Bento, and a number of children's books too. So a great summer review book issue coming up. Subscribe today to get issues like this and others in your mailbox. Thank you, Art, Kelly, and Ryan. Back to you.